Hey guys, Josh with Daily Mountain Bike Rider here, and today I am reviewing the 2018 Devinci Spartan. Now if you haven't heard about Devinci, they've been making bikes up in Canada for about the last 25 years, and they make a wide range of bikes from cross-country all the way up to downhill, but I think they're most known for, and a lot of you would probably agree, is making really great burly bikes that can take a beating and are awesome at going downhill. And the bike I got to demo today, the Spartan, fits perfectly in that category. Now, I'm not lucky enough to own this bike, so I went and got a demo at my local bike shop, Fanatic Bike Company. And if you haven't heard of Fanatic, they're based in the Bellingham area, but they have a really great online presence. Go ahead and check out their site. You can actually build up your own custom bike and see exactly what it would look like from companies like Evil or Nolly or Transition. And they also have cool things like a bike builder in every part you would need. But enough about them, let's talk about the Spartan. They set me up with a full carbon build, and this was the GX build. Now the cool thing about the carbon is they have a bunch of different builds, from a full aluminum NX build at $3,400 all the way up to an $8,000 for carbon top of the line spec. Now looking at the spec of the one they got me, going from the bottom to the top, the rims start with Race Face AR30s. These have a 30mm internal width. Those are connected to Formula hubs, and on those rims are Maxxis Minion, a DHR2 in the rear, and a DHF up front. And those are 27.5, and on the rear you've got a 2.4 tire, and on the front you got a 2.5. Looking up from there, the drivetrain is a SRAM drivetrain, and that is a GX Eagle, matched with a SRAM GX crank. And that's been a really popular group set on a lot of bikes because you get those 12 speeds. Looking at the brakes, those are just SRAM Guide Rs. Up to the suspension, the thing I'm most interested in. In the rear, you've got 165 millimeters of split pivot rear travel design, and that is wrapped around a RockShox Super Deluxe Air shock, which I think was new last year, or might be this year. Oh, it was last year. And these are phenomenal. And then up front, you've got the 2018 RockShox Lyric. That is 170 millimeters of travel, and that's just the RC damper, not the nicer RTC3 damper. Looking at the cockpit, you've got a 780 millimeter wide race face bar, and on that you've just got a normal grip and I think a 40 or 50 millimeter stem. And then looking back at your seat post, you've got a typical RockShox Reverb 125 millimeter seat post with a Reverb 1x remote up front. And last but not least, you've got a SDG saddle with a nice little Devinci touch on the rear. Now enough about the spec, let's talk about how this bike rode. And first up is climbing. And I'm not gonna lie, when I hear a bike that's 165 millimeters of travel on the frame with 170 millimeter of fork, I think it's gonna be a beast to lug up the mountain. But I was really pleasantly surprised. They have a really steep seat angle, and so it gave a really good climbing position. I felt like the bike, even though it had a ton of travel, did pretty well around corners, did great up a fire road, and really I was impressed by how it climbed, and that seems to be a reoccurring theme in these longer travel bikes. But put climbing aside, because descending is where this bike really came to life. Obviously, like I said, Devinci is known for making great bikes for going downhill, and the Spartan is exactly what you would expect it to be. It is a pretty long bike, it's very firm and planted, and it is just a ton of fun. And what I noticed about the bike is it felt very agile and playful. Whether I was just going down a really smooth flow trail where I didn't need a bunch of travel, or I was going down a steep rock descent, or just a rooty, bumpy area, I felt like the harder I pushed the bike, the more it responded and just wanted to be just given everything you could throw at it, and it took it like a champ. Now let me tell you about the three things that really stood out for me for this bike. The first is their updated rear suspension design. Devinci switched up their rear shock position, and they also added a metric trunnion mounted shock, which really made it very supple on the top. And I felt like all the way through the travel, it wasn't necessarily linear, it felt progressive where it got a lot firmer at the bottom of it, but I felt very comfortable no matter how much I was pushing into that rear shock, which was super nice. Second thing that stood out to me is normally when you get bikes that have more travel, they're bikes that you really got to push into in order for them to come alive. But I felt like the Spartan was a lively bike, whether I was riding it slow or fast, big descents or little ones. It really was a joy to ride the entire time. And the last thing I really liked about this bike, it's a thing I wish more companies did, is that you can get it in a wide range of options from alloy, low-end, spec, all the way up to a really nice spec. So guys like me who are penny pinchers can get the same design of a bike like guys who spend more money. Now with all the pros, of course, there are a couple of downsides to the bike. First off, and once again, it's a little thing, but I wish the spec was just a little bit nicer for $5,000. Notably, I wish the brakes were, instead of the Guide Rs, were maybe a Guide RS or an RSC, and I wish that Lyric was the nicer damper just because it's a little nicer and a little more plush on the feel. But throwing that aside, the thing that really stood out to me is while this bike did really great climbing, and I really don't have too many complaints about it, it definitely puts itself in the category that it's designed to go down some pretty gnarly trails. And most of us aren't riding lift access and just downhill enduro trails all the time. So while I don't think this bike is overkill, because like I said, it really did do a good job of being playful, it's definitely intended to go downhill more, which isn't a bad thing because I think it's what Devinci designed. But if I was going to give the bike an overall review, what I would say is I loved this bike, and I was really surprised by how supple and soft and yet playful and agile a longer travel, longer wheelbase 27.5 bike could be. And I'll be honest with you guys, I've ridden a lot of 29-inch bikes recently, and I thought to myself, why do people even make 27.5-inch wheels anymore? And the Spartan kind of gave me a slap in the face and said, this is why, because they're a ton of fun, they're a little more nimble, and man, it was just a great bike. So anyway, that's my review on the 2018 Devinci Spartan. But at the end of the day, who really cares what I say? You guys need to go out there and give this bike a try for yourself and see if this is the bike you should take home and go and bring out on the trails. And I guarantee if you do, you're going to love it. All right, that's enough for me. You guys know what time it is. Don't watch too many bike reviews. Get off your butt and go ride your bike. And while you're at it, make sure to ride it every single day.